I'm Jennifer. Today was supposed to be a throwback to simpler times, hanging out at the amusement park with my bestie, Rachel. We were all about reliving those carefree childhood moments, scoffing down cotton candy, and screaming our heads off on roller coasters. As we stood in line for the Ferris wheel, a little boy in front of us was bouncing around, barely able to contain his excitement. He was with this guy, around my age, trying to keep the kid from darting off into the crowd. "Liam, buddy, stay close, okay?" the guy said, his voice calm but firm. The kid, Liam, nodded, but his attention was all over the place. I couldn't help but smile. The scene was too familiar, reminding me of outings with my younger cousins. Rachel nudged me, whispering, "Hey, he's kinda cute, don't you think?" I shrugged, trying not to look too interested. Who? The kid or the guy? Very funny. The guy, obviously. We got on the Ferris wheel, and as fate would have it, those two ended up in the compartment next to us. From up high, with the world shrinking away, the guy and I exchanged smiles. He had this easy, open face that made you trust him right away. Once we were back on solid ground, Rachel, ever the wingman, dragged me towards them under the guise of helping Liam find his dropped toy car near the exit. "Thanks for helping out," the guy said as we handed the toy back to Liam. "No problem. He's your son?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He chuckled. "Nephew. I'm Jake, by the way, and this whirlwind is Liam." "Jennifer," I said, shaking his hand. "And the lifesaver over there is Rachel." Rachel waved, and Liam tugged on Jake's shirt, asking for ice cream. Jake looked at us, a bit hesitant, then made an offer. "How about we all grab some ice cream together? My treat." "Only if we get the biggest cones." Rachel jumped in, and we all laughed, making our way to the nearest ice cream stand. As Jake managed Liam's hyper-energetic ice cream requests, I saw a different side to him. He was patient, kind, and surprisingly easy to talk to. We started chatting about random things, favorite movies, worst amusement park rides, and how neither of us can stand clowns. "So, you come here often?" Jake asked, his tone teasing. "Only when I feel nostalgic or when someone drags me out," I replied, nudging Rachel who was busy demolishing her double scoop. We spent the rest of the day together, wandering from ride to ride, sharing stories and laughs. As the park lights began to glow against the dusk, Jake pulled out his phone. "Can I get your number? I'd love to do this again, maybe without the wild rides and sugar highs next time." I felt a warm flush of excitement as I typed my number into his phone. "Sure, that sounds great." He grinned. "Great. I'll call you." And he did. The very next day. After Jake called, things between us moved pretty fast, like we were both sure this was it. The dates turned into weekends together, and those weekends turned into an easy routine of just knowing where each other fit. Before we even realized it, we were talking about forever. The day Jake proposed was as simple and beautiful as everything else with him had been. No dramatic gestures, just us on a quiet evening walk. "Jennifer," he started, stopping mid-path and looking a bit nervous, which wasn't like him at all. "I've been thinking a lot about us." "Yeah?" I asked, feeling my heart start to race a bit. "I don't want to scare you off or anything, but I know I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" He pulled out a ring, not flashy, but perfect. My heart skipped. "Of course, I will, you goof. I thought you'd never ask." The wedding was small, just close friends and family. His parents, Mike and Susan, were everything you'd hoped for. Warm, welcoming, they made me feel like I'd been part of the family for years. Susan hugged me tight the first time we met, whispering, "We're so glad he found you." But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Jake's sister, Sarah, was a different story. She was polite enough at the wedding, but I could feel the chill off her. She didn't make it easy, always keeping a bit of distance, her words polite but cold. A few months into the marriage, during a Sunday dinner at Jake's parents' house, I tried to break the ice with her. "Sarah, I was thinking maybe we could go shopping sometime, get to know each other better. She looked up, a bit surprised, then masked it with a polite smile. Maybe. We'll see. I'm pretty busy these days. Her husband, Tom, chimed in with a chuckle. Busy? Babe, you spend more time at the gym than you do at home. Sarah shot him a look that could curdle milk. Some of us care about staying healthy. Life after the wedding felt like it was on fast forward. Me and Jake, we were solid, and soon enough, we got the news that would change everything. I was pregnant. The excitement, it was something else. We were gonna have a baby, our own little family expanding. Jake, are you ready to be a dad? I joked one night as we sat on the couch, my feet in his lap while he read some or other manual on baby stuff. Are you kidding? I was born ready. This kid's gonna have the best dad ever. He shot back with a grin. Yeah, right. Just wait till it's your turn for diaper duty at 3 a.m., I teased. When Johnny was born, it was like a piece of the universe just clicked into place. He was perfect, you know? All those cliches about parents falling in love the moment they see their baby, they're all true. But life, it doesn't always play fair. Johnny was 8 when we got the kind of news that just floors you. Leukemia. It hit us like a freight train. Everything else stopped. Nothing else mattered but getting our boy through this. Jake was a rock, but I could see the strain on him, same as it was eating at me. We spent more time in hospitals than at home. Treatments, tests, more treatments. It was a whirlwind that didn't seem to end. One day, coming back from the hospital, Jake just broke down in the car. Jennifer, this is killing me. Seeing him like this, it's too much. I grabbed his hand, squeezed it hard. We'll get through it, babe. We have to. For Johnny. But it was tough. The disease, it's a monster. It'd retreat a bit, give us a glimmer of hope, then come roaring back. And Johnny, that poor kid, he never complained, not once. Kept talking about getting a puppy one day, when he got better. I'm gonna name him Rocket, he'd say with this little smile. 'Cause he'll be fast like a rocket. It broke my heart, every single day. And then, after a year of fighting, just when we thought we might be seeing a bit of light, it was over. Johnny passed away. After Johnny passed, the house was suffocating, filled with too many echoes of laughter and footsteps that would never sound again. The emptiness was a physical ache, a relentless pressure against my ribs. I spent days, then weeks, tangled in bed sheets, the world outside continuing without a hitch, and it seemed so wrong. Jake, he tried to reach me, his voice a lifeline thrown into the murky waters of my sorrow. Jennifer, love, you gotta eat something, he'd say, his hand hesitant on the door, his silhouette a shadow against the light. I'm not hungry, would be my muffled reply from the depths of our bed, the blankets over my head like a shroud. He'd sigh, the sound heavy with his own grief. Okay, but I'm here, alright? Whenever you're ready. But ready didn't seem like it was ever going to be part of my vocabulary again. How could I be ready to face a world that no longer had Johnny in it? One evening, he came home from work and found me sitting on the floor in Johnny's room, surrounded by his toys and books. He didn't say anything at first, just sat down next to me, his presence a steady warmth. Jennifer, talk to me, he finally whispered, picking up a model airplane Johnny loved. Please, babe. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. Why? It doesn't bring him back. Nothing does. He should be here, Jake. He should be playing and laughing and driving us crazy. Not this. Jake wrapped an arm around me, pulling me against him. I know. It's hell, Jennifer. But we're in this together, okay? You're not alone in this. Days turned into weeks, and I started to move again, robotically at first. The house needed cleaning, groceries needed buying, life's mundane rhythms waiting for no one, not even a grieving mother. Susan, Jake's mom, started dropping by, always with too much food and an abundance of kindness. "Jennifer, you need to keep your strength up," she'd coax, her voice gentle, pushing a plate of something homemade and hearty towards me. "I'm really not hungry, Susan. But thank you." I'd manage, the food a lump in my throat. She never pushed too hard, just sat with me, her company a quiet reminder that the world hadn't completely forsaken me. "When you're ready to talk, I'm here. Until then, we eat or we sit, whichever you need." It was during one of those silent sit-downs when I found the words bubbling up, surprising even me. "He was supposed to outlive us, Susan. It's not right." Her eyes, so like Jake's, filled with tears. "No, it's not right. But it's what happened. All we can do now is live for him, make sure we remember the joy he brought us, not just the pain." "Feels like betraying him, moving on," I admitted, the guilt a chokehold. "It's not betraying him, Jennifer. It's honoring him. You think he'd want his mom this way, stuck and suffering? He'd want you smiling, laughing." "Hard to imagine laughing ever again," I mumbled, the very thought of joy a betrayal in itself. She squeezed my hand. "Maybe not today, or tomorrow. But you will, one day. And it'll feel like Johnny is laughing with you." Gradually, her words, Jake's unwavering support, they started to make a dent. The grief was still there, a vast ocean, but now I had boats in the form of family and friends, keeping me afloat, steering me towards a horizon that promised some semblance of peace. I started stepping outside, the sunlight harsh after so long in the dark. I returned to work, the routine a scaffold, holding me up, giving structure to days that otherwise blurred into one another. One afternoon, Jake found me in the garden, my hands deep in the earth, planting. "Look at you," he said, a small smile breaking through. "Never thought I'd see the day." "Me neither," I replied, looking up at him through strands of hair matted to my forehead. "But here I am." "Yeah, here you are," he echoed, kneeling next to me, his hand over mine in the dirt. "Together, always, right?" "Right," I nodded, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, we could make it through. It had been a year since we'd lost Johnny. Jake and I were slowly finding our footing again, and somehow, life seemed to inch back towards a semblance of normality. One Sunday, his parents invited us over for a family dinner. It was supposed to be a regular gathering, or so I thought. We arrived at Mike and Susan's place around 6 p.m. Dinner was lively, with all the usual banter and the familiar, comforting smell of Susan's cooking. That's until Sarah and her husband Tom arrived. "Jennifer, Jake, how's everything?" Sarah asked as they walked in, her voice never quite reaching warm. "We're getting by," Jake replied, giving me a quick squeeze on the shoulder. We all sat down to eat, the table laden with dishes that made my stomach growl, despite the undercurrent of tension. It was during dessert that things took a turn. Sarah, who'd been unusually quiet, suddenly put her fork down with a clink that drew everyone's attention. "So, I've been thinking," she started, her eyes darting around the table, settling on me. Now that Johnny is gone, what are you planning to do with his education fund?" The room went still. I felt Jake stiffen beside me, and Susan's eyes widened in shock. "What did you just say?" Jake's voice was low, dangerous. Sarah, unfazed, continued. "The money Grandma set aside for Johnny. He won't need it, obviously. It could really help Liam with college next year." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My face felt hot, my palms sweaty. "Are you seriously asking this now, Sarah?" "Well, why not? It's practical. Money sitting there doing nothing doesn't help anyone, Jennifer." Jake was seething now. "It's our money, Sarah. Grandma gave it to Johnny, which means it stays with us. End of story." "But he's dead, Jake." Sarah's voice rose, sharp and cold. "Why keep money for someone who's not here?" "That's enough," Mike interjected, his voice stern. "You're out of line, Sarah." Tom tried to touch Sarah's arm, but she shook him off. "What? We're all thinking it. I'm just the only one saying it out loud." "No, you're the only one thinking it," I shot back, struggling to keep my voice steady. It's not just money, Sarah. It's the last thing his grandmother gave him, a part of her love for him. Love doesn't pay college fees, Jennifer. Be sensible. Sarah snapped back. Jake slammed his hand on the table, making the plates rattle. My sister or not, you're talking about my son. Our son. Show some damn respect. Tom finally spoke up, trying to calm the waters. Maybe we should discuss this some other time, not at the dinner table. Sarah scoffed, pushing her chair back. Whatever. When you all come back to the real world, let me know. Until then, enjoy living in your fantasy, where money grows on trees. She stormed out, with Tom following her, casting apologetic glances our way. There was a heavy silence after they left. Susan got up, her hands shaking as she started clearing the table. I'm so sorry, Jennifer. I don't know what's gotten into her. I shook my head, feeling numb. It's not your fault, Susan. I just can't believe she'd say that. Not now. Not about this. We said our goodbyes, and the drive home was quiet. I leaned my head against the window, the streetlights blurring past. It was one thing to deal with the loss of Johnny, but facing such coldness from Sarah was a different kind of pain. How could family, blood, be so cruel? After Sarah's brazen proposal at dinner, I was livid, but once I cooled down, my mind started racing. Jake's grandma had given a similar amount to Sarah for Liam's education. So, where was that money? Curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself scrolling through Sarah's social media late one evening. The more I clicked, the clearer the picture became. There were Sarah, grinning in designer dresses, flaunting new jewelry, all dating back to around the time we lost Johnny. It was like a punch to the gut. Jake, come look at this, I called out, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice as I flipped through Sarah's posts on my laptop. Jake peered over my shoulder, his brow furrowing. When did she start living like this? Right after Johnny, after we lost him, I muttered, the timeline too perfect to be a coincidence. I couldn't let it go. The next day, I called Melissa, a friend who often got caught in the middle of family drama, hoping she could shed some light. We met at a little diner where nobody would bother us. So, have you noticed Sarah's spending spree? I prodded, trying to sound casual. Melissa stirred her coffee, looking uncomfortable. Yeah, it's hard not to. But did you know? Right after your boy, passed away, she seemed really happy. Said she came into some money. Happy? My voice cracked. Melissa, that money was supposed to be for Liam's college. Melissa bit her lip, glancing around before leaning in closer. Jennifer, I shouldn't say this, but she blew through Liam's college fund. Bought herself all sorts of stuff. She figured you'd end up giving her the money Johnny didn't get to use. I went straight home and told Jake everything. Watching his face cloud with anger and disbelief, I knew this was going to blow up. We need to tell my parents, he said decisively. Now. We drove to his folks' house, and Jake laid it all out for Mike and Susan, who listened in stunned silence. This is serious, Mom, Dad. Sarah spent Liam's education fund on herself and planned to claim Johnny's after. Jake's voice trailed off, choked with emotion. Susan covered her mouth, tears brimming in her eyes. Oh, my God. How could she? We need to confront her, Mike said sternly, a hardness in his eyes I'd rarely seen before. Half an hour after we got home after talking to Jake's parents about the money, Sarah showed up at our door, her face twisted in rage. Before I could even greet her, she barged past me into the living room. You've got some nerve, Jennifer. She spat, her eyes wild. Accusing me in front of everyone. You think you're so perfect? Sarah, you need to leave. Now, Jake said firmly, stepping between us. She ignored him, her voice rising. I had every right to that money. It was just sitting there, and I spent it on myself, and now my boy needs money for college. It's not like your son. She paused, her lips curling into a sneer. it's not like he needs it anymore. I felt a cold fire ignite in my chest. How dare you? I hissed, my hands balling into fists. You speak about my son, about his memory, with such disrespect? Jake grabbed her arm, pulling her towards the door. Get out, Sarah. I won't warn you again. But she yanked her arm free, standing her ground. You'll regret this, both of you. I'll make sure of it, she promised with a venomous look. Without another word, Jake pushed her out and slammed the door shut, locking it. We both stood there, breathing heavily, hearts pounding in the silence that followed. The dreadful moment came just a few days later, the day that would have been Johnny's birthday. I went alone to his grave to lay some flowers and spend some quiet moments, but what I found there stopped me in my tracks. Johnny's grave was desecrated, the flowers trampled, the small mementos we'd left smashed and scattered. I fell to my knees, sobs wrenching from my throat, a raw, hollow pain tearing through me. When Jake and his parents found out, they were devastated. Jake held me close as I told them, his arms tight around me, his own grief mingled with mine. Who could do such a thing? Susan whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. The answer came sooner than we expected. The police reviewed the cemetery surveillance footage and found that it was Sarah who had vandalized Johnny's grave. Tom, Sarah's husband, was furious when he heard what she'd done. He told us he was filing for divorce, unable to stomach her cruelty any longer. I can't be married to someone capable of this. I'm sorry for everything, he said, looking broken. The breach was too great, the act too vile. From that day, none of us spoke to Sarah again. Life after everything that happened with Sarah was like walking out of a long, dark tunnel into the light. Me and Jake, we were exhausted but together, trying to piece back a normal life from the shattered bits of the past months. One cool morning, I was sipping my coffee, staring out the kitchen window, when Jake came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. You okay, babe? He asked, his voice low and concerned. I leaned back into his chest. Yeah, just thinking. It's been a hell of a year, hasn't it? That's when I felt it, a tiny flutter in my belly. I'd been keeping a little secret, unsure of the right moment to share it, but now it felt right. Jake, I've got something to tell you. I'm pregnant, I said, the words lifting some of the heaviness that had settled around us. Jake's reaction was instant. His eyes widened, then he broke into the biggest grin I'd seen in months. Really? For real? Yeah, for real, I laughed, the sound bright in the quiet morning. He lifted me off the ground, spinning me around, before setting me down and pulling me into a fierce hug. This is the best news, Jen. We're gonna have a baby. As the news settled in, we started planning. The spare room would need to be turned into a nursery, and there were a million things to buy and prepare. But more than the logistics, we talked about how we wanted to raise our new child, how we wanted to be his parents. We'll do it right, Jake said one evening as we looked through baby books. Teach him or her everything Johnny taught us. The pregnancy wasn't just a new beginning for us, it brought a new energy to everyone around us. Susan and Mike were over the moon, their excitement a balm on the still tender wounds left by Sarah's actions. Another grandchild to spoil, Susan would say, her eyes twinkling. And this one's gonna have the best guardians. Even Tom, who had been through his own storm, found solace in the joy of our growing family. It's a fresh start for all of us, he said one afternoon as he helped Jake fix up the nursery. Yeah, it is, Jake agreed, hammering away at a piece of stubborn furniture. We're putting the past behind us, for good. And we did just that. As my belly grew, so did our hope and our resolve to build a family filled with love and devoid of the shadows that had plagued us. When our daughter, Lily, was born, it felt like the first truly clear day after a relentless storm. Holding her in my arms, looking into her curious, bright eyes, I felt a peace I hadn't known in a long time. Welcome to the world, Lily, I whispered, her tiny hand gripping my finger. It's not perfect, but it's beautiful, and it's yours. Jake, standing beside me, his hand resting lightly on my shoulder, looked down at Lily, and then at me. We did it, Jen. We're really doing it. Yeah. I smiled up at him, my heart full. We really are. As I watched Lily sleeping peacefully that night, a thought crossed my mind, linking the past with our future. One day, when you're a little bigger, I'll get you a puppy, just like your brother Johnny dreamed of, I whispered to her. We'll call him Rocket, fast and free, just like his dreams. In that moment, it felt like the circle was completing, a new chapter beginning with a nod to what we cherished and lost.